I'm very excited to be here tonight. Hopefully we'll have a good 30 minutes, a little bit more maybe, on learning, and I can leave you with a few key learnings to take home for things you can work with your own LinkedIn profile, for how you represent yourself online in the LinkedIn network, and also for how you can leverage your network and the opportunities that you have with the platform as LinkedIn. Before I kick off, to give you a short introduction to myself, my name is Simon. As Liam also mentioned, I am Danish. I've lived in Dublin now for a little over 6.5 years, and I moved to Ireland to work for LinkedIn back in 2013. In true LinkedIn fashion, if I share something that's not on my LinkedIn profile, back when I moved to Ireland, I didn't really expect to necessarily stay here as long as I have. So come summer 2014, I didn't have any summer plans. And not having seen Ireland, I decided that it was a good idea to plan a walking trip from Dublin to Dingle. I set about this not knowing anything about the Irish road system, and I got about to Dungarvan before I had to give up, simply because the weather was against me and the roads wasn't too safe to walk on. But nonetheless, I absolutely fell in love with this lovely country and have stayed on ever since. But yeah, as Liam said, I'm a manager at LinkedIn. I work with what we call talent solutions, which in essence is guiding companies on how you recruit and retain talent. So such as yourself. I myself is a business alumni coming from Copenhagen Business School, and So the agenda for tonight. So there's really 4 main points that I would like for you to leave with tonight as well. And the agenda for tonight is, I think first and foremost, I would love for myself to give you an idea of the ecosystem that you're part of as a LinkedIn member. The ecosystem that is LinkedIn, and how both that is globally, but also here locally in Ireland and within Europe and EMEA as a region. Then secondly, I'll dive into some of the basics for what we would consider a good LinkedIn profile. How do you represent yourself in the best possible way on LinkedIn as a professional, with the skills that you have, with the experience that you have, and how can you, of course, then go into how can you leverage that, but also how can you leverage and support your network in getting the most out of a platform like LinkedIn. And last but not least, I would like for us to finish on some of the opportunities that are ahead. Some of the things that we see as great opportunities for you, again, back to how you can leverage your LinkedIn profile, so how you can share the knowledge that you have and the work experience that you do have to benefit both your network, but also the people that around you, whether or not that is colleagues, friends, family members, as such. If we start off with kind of the very granular overview, so our core mission and vision is to create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. That sounds like a pretty granular goal, and it's ambitious. And that goes for all of us in this room. So we are all part of the workforce in some way, shape, or form, whether or not we are currently in the workforce in a job or between jobs or studying. We are part of the economy, and we're part of the global workforce. For us to do that, we need to do what we're here tonight to do as well. We need to ensure that we foster connections between individuals that have similar interests, aspirations, goals, backgrounds, and kind of like future. So for us to succeed in creating our economic opportunity, we need to be able to connect you to each other, but we also need to be able to connect you to the people that you have an interest in learning more from or having dialogue with. How do we do this? So if we break down what a network or what LinkedIn is in its most basic components, we've done so here with what we call the economic graph. The economic graph consists of everything that goes into a network, from us as members. I'm a member of LinkedIn, and you are a member of LinkedIn. So as members, we are part of this global community. We represent the companies that we work for. The companies are also present. We have the jobs that they have, and the skill sets and the competencies that it requires to perform those jobs. And of course, last but not least, we are supported in developing those by the schools that are also present on LinkedIn, similar to Trinity. The last bit is on the knowledge. So again, when you share, whether or not that's sharing advice or asking for advice, sharing an update on LinkedIn, that goes into the millions of updates that are every day for kind of providing feedback to your network and to the overall ecosystem. If I put a few numbers to this, LinkedIn today is 675 million members globally, 50 million companies, 20 million jobs, if you were to be detailed and search for them. And us as members represent 36,000 different skills. There's 90,000 schools globally represented on LinkedIn, again, helping us build those skills. But what we also see that is of high interest to us is that we see a development on this over time. So if we go back to, LinkedIn's very early start back in the 2000s, we now see jobs that we didn't even know would exist at the time. I recently, not last week, 2 weeks ago, came across a job where I was a little bit surprised. It was windmill repair specialist. And one of the skill requirements for this job was to be able to operate a drone. Simply because one of the first things they do when you have a 120-meter windmill is that instead of just climbing up the windmill, you send a drone to look, what might I need when I go up there? That's just one example of some of the things that we didn't expect coming, but now is present and live, and companies are searching for. If we look a little bit more locally, so these 675 million members, within the European region, so Europe, Middle East, and Africa, you have, as a member, have an opportunity to connect with up to over 211 million members. Ireland alone, as Liam also mentioned, today have over 2 million LinkedIn members. If we look at the Irish workforce and generally the Irish economy, I think we should be pretty proud of being part of that ecosystem. If we dive into that, very similar, this is the Irish economic graph. I updated this on Monday. 74,000 companies are represented, 30,000 different jobs are live right now, 33,000 different skills, and again, 20,000 schools. It's vast, hard to get your head around. If I transition from the network and the platform that you're part of and into you, like to your profile and what you are representing with your profile on LinkedIn today, the next bit we will dive into what consists of a LinkedIn profile and why does that make it a good LinkedIn profile. This might for some of you be already existing knowledge. In that case, I hope that I can add a little bit of extra why it's important, given what we see on how we interact with people on LinkedIn, how you interact with your fellow alumni, how you interact with your colleagues, and potential future connections. And an ask on this as well, if this is something that you already have control over, is to pay it forward. So we've all come across maybe a colleague, a friend, a family member, or a future connection that could use some support or help in, I'm not quite getting the response I want from a job application. What could I potentially do to improve those chances? By all means, I will share these slides with you as well afterwards. They will be available. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. But let's start. The most simple thing on a LinkedIn profile is to have a photo. We're here tonight to network. And just like you network in an offline, I'm going to use the word offline networking situation, similar we do online. We connect with people that we have a visual of. It's a lot easier to figure out who you're talking to and potentially why you're talking with that person if you have a visual of what does that person look like. It's simply relatable, human to human. What does it mean in terms of having a LinkedIn profile? Quite simply, you have a higher degree of acceptance of the potential connection requests that you send. You have more people that visit and view your profile, again, because they know who they're viewing. They can see who you are. And last but not least, both the messages you send and the messages you would receive have a high degree of response rate. So far, so good? If we go further into the profile, we would have two elements that we call headline and tagline. And now we're going to be a little bit straightforward here. This is what is expected to be a representation of what you do. Again, I quite often get the question of, okay, where do I then find this? And I think our best advice will probably always stay the same. You can seek this from people within your network. So people that work in similar jobs as yourself, colleagues, peers, or if you are aspiring to change your career into a different industry or a different skill set, then look at the people that you admire and aspire to work with. Find inspiration from people that are within your network. I guarantee you will probably be able to find it if you search on LinkedIn, and if you are specific with either the company that you're looking at or the potential peers that you have that could work there. Similar for industry. So industry is important for one thing, and this is one of those that we quite often see maybe not being as updated as often as possible, or as often as it might be applicable. I guess a lot of people, once you have settled on industry, you might stay there, but again, we see a tendency for a change within industry now at a higher scale than we have before, given that people have a tendency to maybe change jobs more often than they did if you go 10, 20, 15, 20 years back. Industry have the impact of increasing your searchability. So all of you that have a LinkedIn profile, I would assume that you have seen someone has viewed your profile notification on LinkedIn. I see a few nods. One of the things, if you dive further into that, is that you will actually see what specific industries you have had more visitors from than others. Again, this should give you a clear indication and reflection on what industries are you attracting most engagement from. And again, if that is not the industry that you have the highest interest in, then you probably should consider updating that. Draft a compelling summary. Compelling summary can, for a lot of people, be a lot of different things. I'll come back to this in a second, but I quite often get one specific question on this that we've heard many times in different ways. But your summary should be a reflection of course, what you do, what you kind of have accomplished, and what you want to aspire to or what you want to achieve. It should be personal. It should be a reflection of who you are as a professional. So if I were to meet you, I should be able to digest a little bit about what do I expect from you, from what values drive you, and who you are as a profession. An example I have of such is that last year I connected with a CEO in Copenhagen who had a slightly different summary that I haven't come across before. So his first line said, I run twice a day and I read 2 books a day. And naturally I was curious. I was like, how do you do that? And then he went on to describe how he enjoyed his work and how he enjoyed working with people development. And in the very end of his summary, he finished off with saying, because he lives in a commuter town outside of Copenhagen, he runs to and from the train. Because he has children, he reads 2 books to his children every night before he goes to bed. But he had a tendency to get quite a lot of messages from people saying, how do you read 2 books a day? And he would be like, have you read my profile? So, I mean, I guess that was very, very given for it. He was a playful individual in that sense. And that was very much spoke to his persona. The question I quite often get on this, and now I'll speak from my opinion, is your summary written in first or third person? I'd say that's up to you. It doesn't change your visibility on LinkedIn. Everything you write on your profile will be searchable. So everything that you have on your profile can either, if you use keywords and other stuff that are well used within your industry, will support you being more visible for whoever searches for people with your skill sets. That was a very lengthy way of saying you can use keywords. Whether or not you write it in first or third person, I'll leave that up to you. My opinion on it would be you wouldn't present yourself in a live session in a third person kind of way. Simon has achieved. That would probably be a little awkward. And when I read it, usually I would say, whenever I read it, I would usually say, given that I know that you have written it, I find it a little odd. But yeah, detail your work experience. This goes for 2 things. This goes both for, of course, your work experience. It also goes for your background within your studies, so forth. It is important, not just today for what you do today, but also for what you have done. And it's important for one simple reason is because we will foster your connectivity within individuals that you have had a higher degree of chance of coming across. I'll give you an example. So let's assume that some of you don't have Trinity on your profile today. If you were to add that tonight, the likelihood of you having suggestions of among this group or the business alumni group for potential people to connect with will go up, given that we will see that there's a direct connection, and that would be based on the year you graduated, what you studied. Same goes for work. So if you have a colleague that don't have a LinkedIn profile right now, but creates one in 2 years' time, and then illustrates that they've worked in 2020 at the same company as you, then that person again would get a potential recommendation to see you as a potential connection. So detailing your experience will kind of support your connectivity throughout your network. I won't go too into depth with this. If any of you have publications or other work-related materials that speak to what you have done, of course it supports your personal brand if you add that to your profile. It supports the narrative and the story you tell on your profile. It makes it easier for me to digest as someone viewing your profile. And when I talk to headhunters across, let's say, Nordics, it's something that they also consider. Like if there's an example of work you've done, it gives us a very straightforward look into the kind of work that you have done within a specific role. So if it's relevant, if it's applicable, you can use it. Endorsements. Endorsements and skills you can get endorsed for are something that we have worked a lot with over the last while. It's something that we continuously try to improve. Whenever you add a skill to your profile, you can decide which ones you want to highlight, which will also a little bit decide which ones we will mostly promote towards your network for potentially endorsing you for. With that said, the main thing in endorsements is that we have worked as much as possible with ensuring that it's relevant people that do endorse you for the skill that you are being endorsed for. So whenever, let's say, I were to endorse Liam, LinkedIn would ask me what's my relation to Liam, how do I know Liam, what kind of capacity have I worked with Liam in, and how well do I know, how certain am I that Liam has this skill. And that would then prioritize how highly that person will be shown when someone else looks at your endorsements and skills, or your skills and the endorsements of such. Make sense? Finishing off, we all have a little bit more quality, or ability to have a little bit more quality in what we call recommendations. So recommendations is something that you can ask for and give on LinkedIn from peers, managers, people that report to you, and people you report to. It has a certain degree of validity, given that it's directly tied to the person giving it. So whenever I look at a recommendation that would be on your profile, beside that recommendation it would be shown in what capacity, if I have worked with you on a project, if I was reporting to you, or if you reported to me during the time where you gave me this recommendation. It also gives a direct link to that person's profile. Again, it's personal. It's similar to you kind of having a very visual recommendation of someone that you can then click into and see, okay, where are they? Who are they? What do they do? Last but not least, if you have any kind of volunteer experience, whether or not that is board seat or volunteer work in a sports club or such, you can add that to your profile. When we look at our LinkedIn members and we look at the LinkedIn community, that more speaks to your passions. So what are you passionate about? What do you spend your time on when you're not at work? So whatever you have there, that is absolutely also something you can add, and that will more help me understand, again, who you are as a person and what do you focus your time on outside of work. Question. Can anyone tell me what's the number one activity that you do as members on LinkedIn? You can shout or shoot. I'll wait until someone answers. Network? Yeah? Be a little bit more specific?
Search jobs?
No. Network is not far off. So
search other people's profiles.
Correct. Gentleman in the back. So the number one thing that we do, because we are naturally very curious as humans, is to view other people's profiles. We have a tendency to want to kind of keep track of our network, but also keep track of people that we admire or people that we might look up to, mirror in our day for what they do and what they've accomplished. This plays a big role in what you see on LinkedIn as well. So what you're maybe not aware of, but will become now, is that, sorry, that sounded wrong. But when you have activity on LinkedIn and when you view other people's profiles, that goes into our work towards what do we recommend for you. So let's say, again, I wanted to change my career and wanted to go into a different industry. If I were to view a profile within a different industry, LinkedIn would start to do suggestions on what could I potentially learn to get into that industry. There's different nudging on, it could be LinkedIn learning courses on what could I potentially add to my profile that would increase my likelihood of obtaining a job within those industry. Similar, if I view someone that has a higher degree of seniority than myself, then okay, what's the difference between my profile and their profile, and what may I add to my profile that could potentially get me to that point? So again, network or viewing other people's profiles is absolutely correct. If we go into a little bit more how you can use your LinkedIn profile and your voice. So I stole this example from Colin. Colin works within sales. Colin does this very well, which I would call be authentic and human. So recently Colin did this update and I stumbled across it and couldn't help but laugh a little bit. So Colin calls out to say, today's Wednesday, you probably already knew that. But he decides to do something that some people are doing today on LinkedIn, which is saying, I'm willing to give some career advice, mentoring, coaching, investment, which is his competency. And saying, you can ask him anything. He also gives us a little bit of feedback. So he's also saying his LinkedIn inbox is a little bit overflown. So you can actually ask him this on Instagram. I'm assuming that's because he wants to keep the stories and be able to show his responses to other people. But he does so in a very human way in the update, which of course gathers a lot of engagement. It's very easy for myself as well, to see that, okay, Colin is likely to actually reply to this. And then he does the most human thing is he does a disclaimer. He says, for those of you who have asked me about my diet and my workout regime, it's pizzas and Netflix. So I'm probably not your guy to answer that. It's very authentic, very easy to understand, and again, it's straightforward. I think it's more a question of anyone could do that, but would you? If you go a little bit further in detail, and this is something that I find quite daunting, and I haven't done yet, but I am committed to do, because my work has asked me as well, but I'm committed to do, and I'll also tell you why it's important and why you should consider it. So on LinkedIn, everyone has an opportunity to do what we call a blog post. A blog post is like an update, but it's just a blog. It's a long post or an update that's directly tied to your profile and your professional brand. Whenever you publish a blog post on LinkedIn, your network would get notified, meaning that everyone would get a notification. It's directly tied into your profile again, making it very easy to find afterwards. So again, the main point of this is for you to share your expertise, for you to share advice or ask for advice from your network to kind of ensure that you can leverage that as much as possible. If we if we take the next step, and this is a very new thing that we are right now testing. We have launched what we call LinkedIn Live, meaning that you can go live on LinkedIn today, where everyone in your network would get anyone you're connected with would get a notification saying that you are now streaming live on LinkedIn. Right now, it's something that you have to apply for, because we want to also ensure that the reason why you're doing it is for the right reasons. But you can apply for becoming what we call a live at LinkedIn ambassador, or a live and LinkedIn tester, however you want to call it. This specific element is an example of a promotion for STEM education that was done between MIT, the International Space Station and NASA. It's hard to compete with NASA. But what they did was that they invited schools around the world who was interested in STEM education to program 2 drones that were on the International Space Station for how they could connect while in zero gravity. And then while streaming live, they launched all these different programs while they dialed into each school and showed them how their program did. Again, very, very applicable. Not something I necessarily would try on myself, but absolutely fun to watch. Had thousands of views live. Other examples is, within communications, branding, sales, recruitment. So PwC in Sweden would be an example as well of someone who's done this quite well, where they had 3 of their consultants just talk about how it is to work at PwC in Sweden. And you could live ask them questions and they would answer them. You can decide yourself, if you become accepted into this, you can decide yourself whether or not your live video will be available afterward you've done your live session. And if so, if it should be, of course, available to your network and someone can find it again. It could also not be live, and then it's just when it's live that you can see it. Doing all this hard work on your profile and updating your profile, absolutely keep it safe. Like, if you do one thing now going out of this room today, my recommendation would be to ensure that you keep your profile safe. And the easiest way to do that on LinkedIn is to enable 2-way verification. If you're in doubt about how to do that, a simple search on 2-way verification LinkedIn will get you to the LinkedIn help page where you very easily can set it up and ensure that your profile is only yours. With that, let's just briefly talk through the key takeaways from here. So I hope you have gotten a very better understanding of what LinkedIn as a platform is, and hopefully also a deeper insight into why the basics of your profile is important, what it actually does for your profile, and why you can become either more visible or less visible in your network, how to leverage potential updates and how you can communicate with your network, and last but not least, some of the opportunities ahead. With that, I will go over to Q&A. First question, what is the value of LinkedIn Premium? That depends on what you're trying to achieve. Premium can be extremely good for, it's a very relevant question, a question we quite often get. Premium can be extremely valuable for some of our members if you're trying to achieve something specific. Without adding a little bit more context to that, that could be if you are on a job search for a specific job, or you are working within a role, alumni relations, where you have to have a further degree of connection with people where you wouldn't otherwise be able to reach out to them. Premium in itself gives you not a higher degree of visibility, but it gives you a chance to search in a slightly different way and gives you a chance to in-mail people that are outside of your network. How can I boost my company profile better? I think that goes back to how do you communicate and from what do you communicate? So, I mean, if you'd like to increase your, you have connections on your profile and you have followers on your company page. If you'd like to increase the followers on your company page, I mean, the easiest way for you to do that is to ensure that you communicate, I almost want to say simply more from your company page, and then share that further from your own profile. So what's the first step of communication? Is that coming from you or is that coming from your company? And again, that will a little bit tie into where the traffic is driven first. What's the best advice for accepting requests to connect or not? That's a good question. What's the best advice to accept connection request or not? I'd say, if you don't know the person and there's my advice to this, whenever you send a connection request, I didn't go into depth with that in this, but whenever you send a connection request, sending a connection request without tying something to it is like blindly saying hi to someone without giving them your name. Why is it that I should accept this? Why is it that I should say yes to this? Again, if you state your purpose, whenever you send a connection request, you have 300 characters. It's very easy for you to say, I admire what you work within, and I would love to hear a little bit more about how you got into that industry, or I saw you present at Trinity Business College and would love to connect so I can ask you further questions on how I do this better. Again, I mean, I think if you state your purpose, it's way easier for someone to accept it. If not, then, I mean, by all means, no one will know if you decline an invitation to connect. What you will see is though, and this is an advice for the room, if you send a connection request without any message or anything, and it's declined, you have an option to say, I don't know the person. If it's unfortunate for you, if you send a lot of connection requests and a lot of people indicate that they don't know you as a person, what actually happens is that we as a network will kind of put you in a little bit of a twilight zone to say, okay, maybe it's not the best idea that you keep sending connection requests because everyone you send to seems not to know you. And that's kind of, you know, we are the platform, and we kind of have to ensure that everyone plays by the same rules and everyone kind of, you know, of course, understands what's the network value here. And again, if someone spoils the game for some, then we kind of have to go, okay, is it the ideal thing for you to send the connection request? All of you will be able to go into your networks on LinkedIn today and see the pending requests that you have, and you can take them back if you would like, if you don't think it's relevant, or you can take them back and then potentially add a message to it as well. How far should one go back with work experience? I sense there's a little bit of difference in what year people graduated within the room, but I would say you should go back as far as it's relevant. As far as it's relevant for you, as far as it's relevant for, you know, the background that you have or what you work within. If it's added experience to where you are today, if it's added to the person you are today and what you've taken away from that, then I think it's relevant. So again, that's for you to judge. It doesn't necessarily give you better or worse, but if you search for, let's say, a very specific competence and skill you only have had, or you only added and mentioned one place on your profile and experience you have 12, 15, 18, 20 years back, then that is where it will pop up and why you will be seen doing a search like that. Yes and no. Like, I fully agree with that. Like, I would say if it's, like usually what I do if I have a connection request from someone I absolutely don't know and I don't quite know why they've connected with me is that I would write them a message saying, thank you for connecting. Is there anything specific I can help you with? And then maybe 5 out of 10 times I get a reply saying, I have this problem with LinkedIn, can you sort it out for me? The other 5, someone just says, no, I just found your profile through recommended, and I'll be like, okay, that's fair. But then that's a follower, not a connection. So that's someone that could follow what you do and not a connection. So I mean, again, back to the other question, don't be afraid of declining a connection or connecting with someone. The only way for you to broaden your network is for you to connect with people outside of your network. So all-star is what you would achieve if you do the basics. So if you have those basic elements to your profile, and there's a few other things, but if you have those, then I would assume that you also have the others. I'll make that available in the presentation so you have very clarity on what that takes. How important is it? The more complete your profile is, the easier it is to, of course, understand where you're coming from, what experience you have, and again, search and find you. So I would say it's important. Is it the most important thing? No. But we will continue to nudge you as a member to say, okay, have you published anything? Have you, like whenever we add a new element to the LinkedIn profile, we will nudge you to say, okay, is this something that you actually have that you could add to your profile? That would continue to kind of add to your brand. How important is it adding hashtags on posts for engagement levels? So that's a very relevant question. So hashtags on posts would give you what we call themed conversations. So hashtags now are also indexed and will, if they're not for you, they will become searchable. So let's say you click into a conversation topic on learning or Trinity, then anything with that hashtag will show up under that. So again, it's a way for us to index the updates that might be on a specific topic. If you have certain interests, you can also follow that, similar to how you can follow influencers or people in your network, companies, so forth. Are my previous posts visible to recruiters with LinkedIn talent solutions? So no, like content that you publish on your profile is visible to your network. Of course, if you're connected with someone and they're a third degree connection to you, that will also be visible. That can also be visible to them. But if we look at the feed, right now we see millions of updates every hour. So the likelihood of someone going even a week back in what you might have liked, shared, commented on is unlikely. Specifically not maybe a month or a year or even 2 years. So should you be posting content that will make you look appealing? Like, I think you should be posting content that you find relevant within your industry, the area of expertise that you would like to work within, and focus on that. If you think that the content that you see and read and kind of come across is relevant to your network, that's when you should start to share it. On that note, actually content that you do share that have a high degree of engagement within certain parts of your network will have an elevation within that network. So if there's a tendency for, let's say, 50 people within your network always liking, commenting on your posts, those people will have a higher likelihood of seeing those posts when you post an update. Actually, one element that's on, if you have the LinkedIn app, one thing you can do is that if you open the app, there's in the top right-hand corner, you'll have one thing that you can enable, which is either your own ID, what is called code, which is easily scanned, and then you can connect with someone just by flipping your camera for their screen, so you don't have to actually look them up. The second thing is that there's a function on LinkedIn within your settings that is called People Nearby. If you enable People Nearby, you will be visible to the people that are nearby. So if you are at a conference, a lecture, or at an industry event, you'll be able to do so, and people that you are not connected with that are within your vicinity should show up. There is no prioritization between the two. If you share something, if you like it, it goes into your network as something you've liked. There is a difference in what you can add to it. So if you share something, you have an ability to add what is your opinion on it? How do you view this? So as soon as you share it, it becomes an update on your profile where you can add an update before the actual update you're sharing.
Trying to maximize your profile. Is one better than the other?
I would say if you're sharing something with your network, again, adding why you're sharing it probably helps, or why it's relevant, why I should read it, why I should click what you have shared.
I'm looking from the other angle. If you're asking somebody else to share it.
Yeah, okay.
Same
So
sort of thing. Should I ask them to share it or like it? Or comment?
I guess that depends on why you're asking them to share it. So if you're asking them for visibility for you, I would say, again, make it as easy as possible for them to share it. Make it third degree relevant. So if I were to ask you all to share tonight, like some of the feedback or some of the key takeaways from tonight with your network, I would probably, again, make it as relevant for giving your connections value from what you're sharing when I ask you to share it. So instead of thinking, what are you getting in terms of information and potential visibility, think about, okay, what does it tell about people that share it for you? Is it something that adds to their, is that providing value for their network and then also giving them value? If it's okay with you guys, I think with that, any of the questions I'm happy to answer. Thank you so much. Hope that's okay.